Matthew Shaun Day Woods. I was born on in the 1959 on the East Coast in a little small rural town. Like I said, it's a small town, a rough town, uh, bordered Quebec in Acadia. There's a big native res there that was part of the town. And so French, English, and Acadians and Quebecers, lower middle class family. I came of age in the 70s when there's a lot of very exciting and inspiring movements. American Indian movement, Black Power, women's lib, gay liberation. So that was kind of like the social context. So seeing that, witnessing that made me feel a couple of things. One is that change is possible because it was happening. It was happening all around me, even though I was like 13 or 14 was happening. The war was ended. There was 73 there. And that there was a society that excluded a lot of people based on all types of reasons. So I clearly didn't want to identify with the society that was harming gays, women, blacks, indigenous people. So at a very young age, I saw this division. And that was kind of like the original kind of way in to identify not with the dominant reality or the dominant society, but with the outsiders and the excluded. I explored a variety of political philosophies and spiritualities, sort of, my journey, let's call it. It could be new agey. Tried nationalism, looked at existentialism, looked at Marxism, looked at cultural nationalisms, looked at just a variety of things, and came across anarchism kind of by chance in a library. And that seemed to make the most sense to me. It was just one little introductory book, Daniel Guérin's book. He's more of a Marxist anyway, but it kind of opened some doors. And I saw, oh, this kind of links all those struggles. Those individual struggles suddenly didn't seem to be so individual. And I also always identified I was a very angry and self-destructive kid. And that kind of explained that rather than my parents or some failure on my part or some genetic predisposition. It's kind of like, oh, there are social reasons why people are self-destructive. There are social reasons why people are angry. So it kind of explained my own identification with being an outsider, and it linked all those struggles that I had witnessed as a young person. So yeah, that's kind of led me into the anarchist portal, through the anarchist portal. I did a lot of prison solidarity for a while. So I started the Vancouver, BC chapter of the Anarchist Black Cross, which is specifically focused on prisoner solidarity. I did a radio show on prison abolition and prison solidarity for several years. I wrote to prisoners and fundraised for prisoners. So that was one aspect. I participated in a lot of squatting. I met the mother of both my kids there. I did clandestine squats as well as public ones to kind of push local authorities to deal with the housing issue. And organized demos. I started a drop-in center with a photocopier so people could come in and print their zines. I worked in bookstores. I actually had a whole big long list. I could remember half of them, but started a free school. I recently formed a mutual aid group a couple of years ago. Has had 20 odd people in it. So every couple of Sundays we get together, have a meal, and help someone out with whatever they need in their life. And I also co-founded a successful intentional community. There's 15 houses there. It's based on anarchist principles and values. So yeah, it's a whole lifetime of, because I became an anarchist very young, kind of late teens, and I'm 66. So how do you summarize 45 odd years of doing stuff? People imagine prison abolition today when we're a very dysfunctional culture. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of violence. So that's a scary thought. So there's prison abolition today, and there's prison abolition in a world in which, that we've changed, we've altered. which is more communal and more egalitarian. So those are two kind of separate conversations. But even looking at prison abolition today, you can like, I'm in Canada, so you can look at, say, all the people that we need to be, protected from. So if we took all those people, they would only need like one very small institution. We wouldn't need a whole like network, a whole industrial network of prison, like a whole carceral kind of culture, because most people are there for kinds of poverty. They're there for self-destructive things. They're there for mental health. They're there for addiction. It's not violent. We don't need to be protected. It's largely because it's like warehousing people that we don't know what to do with. Problems we can't solve, we take people and we warehouse them. So if the fear of prison abolition that has to do with your personal safety, it's unfounded because there's so little of that actually happening. Those are only a few people. And if it's people need to take, accountability for their actions while putting them in a cage, if you imagine a historian in the future looking back at today, we have millions of people in cages, it would seem what we call medieval. It would just seem totally, it's not effective. It doesn't help. It doesn't protect you, and it doesn't prevent crime. It just responds to it. So there's a lot of, there's a lot of really good arguments for it today, and certainly in a different world, in a more caring world where, bonds are deeper and yeah. That's a really difficult one because you have the historic movement or political philosophy or critique that looked at hierarchy and coercion and domination and all the institutions associated with that. And you go, well, those things are not helpful. And in fact, they're harmful. So they're unnecessary and they're harmful. So let's focus on dismantling them and abolishing them. But I think that, like, it kind of grew out of the historic movement grew out of the Enlightenment, and I think there's a lot of shortcomings to it. So I think most people can, if I was trying to explain something like the very basics, I don't know how much I would use the term anarchism. I would say, for instance, I would give the values like cooperation, mutual aid, voluntary association, those kind of the values and the principles and the critique. But I would say there's many historic movements and political philosophies that have explored this, because I don't think that anarchism as a historic movement actually gets everything or got everything. It's a little Eurocentric. It missed the ecological aspect. It misses a lot of stuff. So I wouldn't want to try to like proselytize or convert someone to anarchism, but I would use more anarchic life ways, or a world without domination. Like, you use other ways in that are easier for them to understand and identify with, rather than I want you to adopt an ism. For a lot of people, that's, they feel like they're being proselytized. I used to wear this little cap and it had the word ism with a line through it, as in no more isms. But it's useful. It's a useful term because there is a historic movement that came very close and, in fact, succeeded in some places in establishing the type of society that we're talking about. Spain and Russia, different places. But yeah, I kind of have a little bit of it's just one of the streams that come into my river of anarchy. I think like that traditional or classical anarchist movement was renewed in the 70s and 80s. It hasn't been widely embraced, but in a lot of ways. So you kind of have people are sticking to that traditional thing. I don't want to call it like the conservative wing of anarchism, but in a sense they are. And then you have the renewal of anarchism in the 70s and 80s. You have like the post-left anarchists and the eco-anarchists and the primitivist anarchists and the individualists, like all these different critiques came in. And I think that's where I find myself. It's like, wow, so within the anarchists, broadly speaking, there's all these sub-tendencies and parallel things that are happening. And outside of the anarchist world, well, there's Taoism and there's the Stoics and there's all the levelers and there's the indigenous culture. So there's a lot of other, examples or inspirations, art movements, the surrealists, all types of stuff that also come into play. So you know, it's a mix of both of those kind of sets of ideas. Well, in the contemporary, I think like it's really the only hope. I think everything else has been kind of tried. It's like it's anarchism's turn now. In the broadest sense of how history, recent history, let's say the last couple of thousand years, that's what we've tried. Marxism, we've tried all forms of centralization and all forms of democratic arrangements and all types of structures and institutions and systems, and I think they've all proven failures. They've either wrecked nature, or they've left us atomized and miserable and suicidal, or we're all in prison, or we're at war. There's every reason to reject everything that's been tried so far. And the one kind of movement, and I say it very broadly, is the anarchist one. That's the one that hasn't really been fully explored. And I think truly it's insofar as it's really open and pluralistic. Like, I'm not personally interested in any global systems. I don't want the whole world's citizens to be familiar with Kropotkin or Bakunin. That would be almost dystopian to me. I see anarchism as something very small scale and local, like networks, very loose networks of small scale, autonomous places. So it would be a great variety of ways of living. So to get to there, I think the world that I want to live in would definitely be it's anarchist and anarchist adjacent and anarchist friendly and anarchist similar. Those are the movements. And today there's like Rojava, and there's the Zapatistas, and there's indigenous people, and there's all kinds of struggles that are happening that that are similar. So it's not like there's nothing happening. It's how can we gel all these little things. Like I've coined these expressions through my kind of life with anarchists. And one of them is, I don't want a mass movement. I want a mass of movements. So I think that's more reflective of what anarchism is. We don't want a monolithic world. So why would we have a monolithic movement? We don't want a mass society. So why would we have a mass movement? If we want diversity, we want a movement that's diverse. So we want a mass of movements, but loosely affiliated and networked and collaborating to undo the world that we live in, and end up with a whole lot of satellites and autonomous regions and areas, rather than let's self-manage the United States. It's not just about reorganizing the workplace for me or democratizing the workplace. I would question work and the nature of work. And I think the ecological thing is another whole aspect that has to be not just taken into consideration for moral reasons or anything like that. It's practical and pragmatic. We need to have habitats. Every creature needs a habitat. So I think the struggle also needs to be based in some way, like clearly, definitively attached to the idea that ultimately we're aiming for healthy people in healthy habitats. So the struggle as we get along needs to reflect that. So that's the localism. If you're attached to an area and you feel like you belong to it and you want to defend it, then all those little people embedded in habitats are working together to create a world where all that's possible for everybody, not a highly ultra organized, complex Canada or United States that's anarchist. I think that's the problem with the anarchists. The classical movement hasn't addressed mass and scale and even complexity, because I think complexity often leads to hierarchy. If you have a mass, if you have a big city, you end up with hierarchy. It's less likely in a smaller context. And if it arises, you can easily deal with it. I'm kind of like anti-politics. I think like the left and the anarchists, I don't see the anarchists as part of the left, but let's just say both of those have functioned too long. Like, there's all these rituals and these mantras that get repeated and tried over and over again. I think you don't. It's certainly not. Let's form a formal organization and get memberships and fill that vessel. I think it's more like where you live and where you work. You talk to the people in ways that you were asking me earlier about your values and the world you like to live in. You share the vision, because the vision is very beautiful. It is a beautiful idea. When I talk to people about, well, wouldn't you like to live where food isn't an issue. There's no price tags on anything. There's no currency. You take what you need and you give what you can, and you're connected to your nature. You have a kinship with the natural surroundings, and you have a kinship with each other, and you care about each other. That you want to defend. Anarchists have always been on the attack, trying to demolish the world. But you think of Indigenous people, they're often defending something because they already have something. And I think we need to get to that point. So it's a little bit breaking with leftist rituals and leftism generally and what you expect, and just talking to your friends, your neighbors, and not having it based on, certainly not sort of identity politics, but just there's someone I can talk to. He's the guy across the street. He's a truck driver. He's a whatever. And you share your vision, and it sticks with whoever is inspired by it. Not to say that I don't think propaganda is extremely important, because the reason I became an anarchist because I came across anarchist literature. So one of the things I think anarchists should be doing a hell of a lot more is flooding wherever they live with critiques that come from an anarchist point of view, and anarchist ideas and anarchist-adjacent ideas, looking at, if you live in Arkansas, whatever is happening there, and you look at it through the lens of an anarchist, someone who's against commodification and against hierarchy, and you explain the world through that lens, because all we ever get is either a Marxist or a liberal or a fascist or something else. We don't get the anarchist thing, and online is not going to do it. It's not, because there's a big filter online. I believe people are interested or going to look at the videos or look at the streamers or look at whatever it is, listen to the podcast. But the guy across the street is not going to be doing that. He's not going to go and look. But if you leave literature around wherever you live, I think that's very, very helpful. I used to do that quite a bit, like do zines or newspapers. There was newspapers at the time, but I do like 2,000 or 3,000 copies and leave stacks in cafes and random places, so that just someone like me could come across something that's like, oh, this explains contemporary issues, and maybe there's a contact address, maybe there isn't. Like, I think that's the way. And other than that, I think it's more, we have to hope for spontaneity. People come out into the streets when they're pissed off. So you have your propaganda, and you have like at the very bottom, you have your most intimate would be sharing with your friends and neighbors and family, your vision and your critique. Then you'd have propaganda that's a little more, anonymous. And that doesn't mean that you and your friends aren't going to a demo, but if you and your friends want to go, you go. And I also think really like building the anarchist movement specifically, and stop identifying with the left generally. The left is just a millstone on our neck. It's not going to get us anywhere. It's proven historically not to get us anywhere, but more, police states, less imagination, more politics, more bureaucrats, more managers, more whatever. We don't want that. So grow the anarchist movement specifically. Find other anarchists, put out anarchist propaganda, get together with anarchists in little affinity groups and go to demos. And it's okay. Like, I'm anti-organizationalist in the sense of, I don't think that's the way, because I think in terms of a mass group, mass organization, but being organized as a verb as opposed to organization as a noun. So I think, the way isn't by building organizations, but it's being organized, and people will be inspired by that. And, I think security culture also is a double-edged sword. You have to be careful not to alienate people because, they don't look cool, they don't look like a punk, or they don't have a mask on. There's all ages, all types. It can't just be the people in the streets. It has to be, like, ideally it's entire communities, it's neighborhoods and towns and villages that would be resisting, and not just the young people who can go to a demo, or, you know what I mean? So I don't know if any of that, if you put that together, what you end up with in terms of trying to get people out, but it's thinking differently than just trying to get people out onto the streets. It's inspiring people and sharing a vision, a critique that they themselves want to go on their own with their peeps. I really do believe that some type of insurrectionary subsistence is the way to go. It's like a eco-anarchist thing that a group of us have kind of developed over the few years. It's just like, you pick an area and you commit to it, and you commit to the people there, and you try to understand nature there. So you have a kinship with the people, you have a kinship with the nature, and you want to create something here and now that's also a stepping stone towards something larger. So you learn subsistence skills, you learn what, you don't just say that's a tree, you go, oh, that tree gives me my rope and my hat, and that plant gives me my medicine. And you get to know where you live and you want to defend it. So, and it's insurrectionary because you actually fight to defend it. You try to prevent the expansion of, a prison or industrial stuff. They're going to destroy your habitat where you live, your home. So I think if anarchism went more in that route, like it would just be organically self-organized. It would organically happen. It wouldn't be this thing we need people on the outside to teach people about ideas, and it would just naturally happen that you want to maintain those kinship ties with nature and with each other, and you want to defend this thing that you're creating. So it also takes care of, it's not just in the future, here and now you have a better life in your little commune or your habitat, and together you can also join with others and do some fighting, so balance it all out.